On December 14, 2016, 17-year-old Shadi Najjar arranged to buy weed from a woman named Kara Yanis, who was pregnant at the time. Shadi pulled up in his Honda Civic and met her at the agreed-upon spot. But instead of paying for the weed, he reached out the window, snatched the weed out of her hand, and sped off. In the process, he ran over her foot, injuring her. Her husband, Jose Ovelson Canales Yanes, was there and watched it all happen. Kara ended up in the hospital. Luckily, her unborn baby wasn't harmed. Later that same day, Jose tried calling Shadi 3 separate times, but Shadi never picked up. Jose decided he wasn't going to let this slide. He decided to get revenge on Shadi and brought in 2 of his close friends to help him, Edgar Garcia Guiona and Roni Galicia. All 3 men were super close, and people who knew them said Jose and Edgar were like brothers. Edgar had a younger half-brother, Roger Garcia, who had just graduated from the same high school Shadi was a senior at. On May 31, 2017, Roger, using the Snapchat handle, Roger Loudpack, added Shadi on the app. Shadi accepted Roger's friend request, and that opened a direct line of communication. A few days later, on June 5th at around 5 p.m., Victoria Curia, who was dating Roger at the time, went to a trailer in Germantown where Roger was living with extended family. Inside, she saw Roger, Ronnie, Edgar, and another man who she only knew by his nickname, Joker. After smoking weed with Roger and Ronnie, Victoria and Roger hooked up, and she eventually fell asleep. When she woke up around 8:32 p.m., there were 3 other people in the room, Jose and 2 African-American men she didn't recognize. Edgar and Ronnie were sitting on the couch, and Ronnie was holding his phone and was looking at it. Roger and Jose were standing nearby, looking over Ronnie's shoulder at whatever was on his screen. Victoria overheard someone mention East Village in court. Then she noticed a black pistol sitting on the nightstand next to the bed. She said she had never seen that gun before. At that point, she started to feel uneasy, so she grabbed her things and left. As she walked past Ronnie, she noticed him scrolling on his phone, zooming in and out on what looked like a map. Outside the trailer, she noticed a silver or gray SUV parked nearby. Earlier that day, Shadi had posted on Snapchat that he had an extra ticket to the next day's graduation ceremony. The men saw an opportunity to get their revenge. While Victoria was still asleep, Roger messaged Shadi at 8:16 p.m., asking if the ticket was still up for grabs. A few messages later, they agreed to meet at Gallery Court, a quiet cul-de-sac in Montgomery Village. That night, Shadi drove to the spot with his friend, 18-year-old Artem Ziberov. Both boys were seniors at Northwest High School and were supposed to attend their graduation ceremony the next day. At 10 p.m., Shadi messaged Roger, letting him know they'd arrived. Roger told him he was at an ATM but would be there soon. A few minutes later, he asked what kind of car Shadi was in. Shadi wrote blue. Roger responded, all right. At 10:29 p.m., Shadi sent a final message to a different friend. That would be the last activity on his Snapchat account. Just 1 minute later, at 10:30 p.m., the silence at Gallery Court was shattered. A home security camera from a nearby resident, Gordon Gipe, picked up the sound of multiple gunshots. Meanwhile, another neighbor, Barbara Covington, was sitting on her sister's front porch when she noticed a gray van enter the cul-de-sac very, very slowly. Not long after that, she saw flashes, red and blue bursts, coming from the driver's side of the van, followed by a series of pops that sounded like firecrackers. She rushed inside, looked out from the upstairs window, and noticed another car parked at the entrance of the cul-de-sac with its headlights on, but it wasn't moving. Shadi and Artem were ambushed and gunned down with at least 3, possibly 4, different guns. Shadi was shot 3 times in the head at close range and once in the left thigh. Artem was hit at least 10 times in his neck, chest, back, and both arms. They both died immediately. News of their murders sent shockwaves through the Montgomery County area, drawing widespread media attention. At the time of the murders, Luz da Silva was Edgar's girlfriend and the mother of his 5-month-old daughter. The two had known each other since they were teenagers and reconnected in 2016. By then, Luz already had 2 other kids, and for a while, Luz, Edgar, the kids, Roger, and other relatives were living together in the trailer in Germantown. But by the end of that year, things fell apart. Luz got kicked out and moved back in with her mom for a bit. Not long after, right before giving birth to their daughter, she and Edgar got their own place, a townhome on Lamont Lane in Gaithersburg. That's where they were living when the murders happened. On the night of the murders, Luz was home with the baby and her 2 older kids. It was just after 11 p.m. and she was getting frustrated. Edgar still wasn't home and she texted him, asking when he was coming back. She had work early the next morning and the baby kept waking up, so she needed him there. Edgar replied at 11:14, saying Jose was about to drop him off. But by 11:48, he still wasn't back. Luz sent him another message, "Come on, Edgar." A few minutes before midnight, she finally saw him get out of a gray Saturn, a car she knew Jose often drove. Edgar brought back milk for their baby, just like she'd asked, but something about him felt off. Luz said he looked nervous and jittery, something she knew he usually did when he did something wrong. When Victoria got home after leaving the trailer, she immediately texted Roger, but he didn't reply until the next morning. When she confronted him about ignoring her, Roger got defensive. He gave her a few different stories about where he'd been and what he'd been doing. Roger later told her to lie if the police questioned her. He wanted her to say she left the trailer later than she actually had, specifically at 10:45 p.m., and to say that only the 2 of them and Joker had been there that night. The morning after the murders, Luz left the house early to head to work while Edgar stayed home with the kids. When she got home later that afternoon, she immediately asked him what was going on. Something just didn't feel right. Edgar said, "Oh, nothing, just watch the news." By then, the murders were all over the local news. So he turned on the TV, and they watched a segment about the double murder. Luz looked over at Edgar and said she just knew. Something in his face gave it away. She looked at him and asked, "Why did you do this?" He said, "All that matters is that we already got it done. And it happened just like the movies. You know that we just went over there quick as shit and just got them, and then that was it." He described the shooting like a 7-second movie. When Luz pressed him again and asked why, Edgar simply said, "You already know why. Because those are the guys that ran over Kara." Kara, of course, being Jose's pregnant wife, the one who got hurt during that drug deal gone wrong months earlier. Edgar confessed everything to Luz. He told her how they lured one of the boys through Snapchat and set up the ambush, and that they drove to the scene in a car that belonged to Jose's wife. Then Edgar said they asked the teens for their phones and smashed them so that the police won't be able to find the Snapchat messages between Shadi and Roger. After taking their phones, they started shooting. Police were never able to recover Shadi's phone. He even admitted he was shocked that his younger brother Roger pulled a gun and started firing. Edgar told Luz that he never thought Roger would do something like that. 10 days after the murder, on June 16th, Jose and his wife Kara showed up at the townhouse. Before they left, Jose asked Edgar if he could leave a box of bullets at the house. Luz asked why, and he said it was because it was hot outside. Luz took that to mean police were looking for him. Jose tucked the box of ammo behind the TV. Luz was terrified to come forward and tell the police about what Edgar told her. However, on the same day Jose and Kara came by the house, she watched a news segment of a grieving father of one of the boys speaking on the news, and it hit her hard. She couldn't stay quiet anymore. She called the police and said she had information about the murders. She sent a photo of the bullets to Detective Michael Karen, and just after midnight, her formal interview began. Detective Beverly Glenn met her outside the townhouse in a patrol car. Edgar wasn't home, so Luz had to bring her baby daughter with her. The interview lasted over an hour and a half. Luz told her everything. FBI Special Agent Richard Fennern, who specialized in historical cell site analysis, mapped out where each person's phone was throughout the night based on which towers their devices connected to. Ronnie's phone first pinged off a tower near the Germantown trailer around 8:09 p.m. Then around 9 p.m., it pinged near a townhouse on Appledore Way, which is where he'd been staying at the time. After that, there was no activity on his phone until just after midnight, when it reconnected near the same Appledore location. As for Edgar and Roger, their phones both showed them at the trailer between 8 and 9 p.m. Jose's phone activity placed him arriving a bit later, around 9:30. Then at 9:53 p.m., Edgar got a phone call from someone located in the same area as Ronnie's townhouse, and a tower ping confirmed Edgar was likely near Appledore Way. After that, there was no activity on his phone until the next day. Right after 10 p.m., Jose's phone showed it was on the move, heading in the direction of Gallery Court, the location where Shadi and Artem were ultimately killed. Then at exactly 10:31 p.m., Roger's phone pinged off a tower close to the crime scene. After that, his phone either died, was turned off, or intentionally taken offline, because every incoming call went straight to voicemail. Later that night, Jose's phone pinged off towers near the trailer, once at 10:44 p.m., and again at 11:41 p.m. Police executed search warrants at 3 key locations: the Germantown trailer where Roger lived, the home of Kara's parents where Jose was staying, and the Gaithersburg townhouse where Edgar and Luz lived. Inside the trailer, detectives found .40 caliber Smith & Wesson ammo in a dresser, and a live .380 round sitting on the floor of a shed connected to Roger's bedroom. Over at Edgar's townhouse, they recovered a box of Blazer brand .40 caliber Smith & Wesson cartridges. Investigators pulled a latent print off that box, and it came back to Jose. Crime scene techs recovered shell casings in 3 calibers, 6 Max Tech brand .45 automatic casings, 11 Blazer brand .40 Smith & Wesson casings, and 13 9mm Luger casings. They also looked at bullets and fragments pulled from the scene and the victims' bodies. DNA testing on the 6.45 casing showed a mixed DNA profile, and Ronnie came back as a match for the major profile in that mix. 5 days after the murders, Ronnie's Google account searched for Smith & Wesson 9mm. Prosecutors argued that Ronnie had likely gotten rid of the 9mm he used in the shooting and was now looking to replace it. Less than 2 weeks after the murders, on June 17th, 24-year-old Edgar, 19-year-old Roger, and 25-year-old Jose were all arrested for the killings. On the way to the station, police overheard Edgar talking to Roger. He was telling him not to talk and saying things like, "We did good." He even said he didn't think they'd get convicted. Not long after the arrests, Roger's girlfriend, Victoria, opened up to her boss, Jasmine Jones. She admitted she thought Roger, Edgar, and Edgar's best friend were all involved in the murders. On June 23rd, Jasmine passed that info to police, and 6 days later, detectives brought Victoria in for an interview. But during that first sit-down, Victoria wasn't honest. She later admitted she lied to protect Roger because, in her words, she really cared about him. In July 2017, Edgar and Roger were formally indicted, and prosecutors planned to try them together. Jose waived his right to a jury trial and opted for a bench trial instead, which meant that a judge would decide whether he's guilty or innocent of the crimes he is charged with. His case was heard separately in January 2018. Then on October 11th, Victoria came back for a second interview. She told the detective the truth about what she had seen at the trailer the night of the murders, starting around 5 p.m. She said she and Roger had broken up not long after that first interview, and keeping quiet had been weighing on her. She said the guilt had started to eat away at her, and she just wanted her sanity back. In November 2017, Ronnie was arrested on unrelated charges, but by December 1st, he too was charged with a double homicide. Prosecutors filed a new indictment against Edgar, Roger, and Ronnie, and all three were tried together. The trial officially began on October 22nd, 2018, and lasted 10 days. But midway through, Roger's lawyer got sick, and the judge had no choice but to declare a mistrial in his case. Roger was retried separately a year later in December 2019. All 4 men were ultimately convicted in Montgomery County Circuit Court. In the joint trial, both Edgar Garcia Guiona and Ronnie Galicia were found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 firearm charges, and armed robbery. They were each sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murders, another life sentence for the conspiracy charge, and 60 more years for the gun and robbery charges. Roger Garcia was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 firearm charges. He was sentenced to 100 years in prison. Jose Ovelson Canales Yanez was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, 4 gun charges, and armed robbery. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 20 years. Thank you for watching.